Hello, Browns fans. Welcome to the OBR post-game show. My name's Barry McBride. Hanging out with me here is Pete Smith. How you doing, Pete?
I am deflated by injuries. I can live with the other elements, but the injuries are what just suck the life out of you.
Yeah, what specifically are you referring to? I mean, they lost Blake Collins, Jack Conklin.
Well, I mean, Jack Conklin left with what is becoming like a routine concussion almost, which is, it sounds, easy to say that, but it's terrible. But I mean, obviously the biggest concern is Malik Collins. I mean, anytime the card comes out, it's not good. He's having a career year. He's been an absolutely a great player. He's under contract for next season, so I expect he'll be back. But like you assume immediately he's going to be out for the year, and it's just a question of what did he do. And then Dylan Sampson, initially they called it questionable at the calf, and then eventually ruled out. Is that a situation where, it basically got to a point where they're like, there's no point in putting him back in the game, or is it something more serious? Because that one sucks because he's a rookie player who actually had some nice moments in this game, building off of what he did last week. So you hope he's able to come back in short order. And the other part of that is, they were already running with one running back who's injured in Jerome Ford in this game, who came into the game with a hamstring injury. So that may point to us finally getting our second look at Raheem Sanders next week. But yeah, I mean, just those elements suck. And the fact that we watched three depth offensive linemen have to come into the game at different points. Luke Whippler had to come in at center, which, I think a lot of people are kind of curious at what Luke Whippler could do, but Devin Jenkins was just rotating with Wyatt Teller. And then obviously KT Leviston, who's always an adventure for good and bad, was in there quite a bit for that game. Obviously took over the full deal once Conklin was out.
Well, what's important about that offensive line is the offseason. The offseason is going to be big for the offensive line. And if you look in the upper left corner of your screen, you will see a QR code. If you click that QR code or do your little camera thing with it, it will take you to a subscription page for the OBR where you will save 75% off of your annual subscription. And I think it's well worth the investment because we got a huge offseason coming up as we have these rookies developing and all the excitement around that, we're going to add more youth to this roster during the offseason and maybe some free agent acquisitions, and you'll want to be tuned into the OBR for all of that. So that's how I segue from injuries to pitching our subscription deal.
Well, I mean, if you subscribed, you'd have what Lane just recently reported on Shedeur Sanders before this game and their plan moving forward. And then a nice little tidbit and update on where JOK is at. So because a lot of people are always asking, where the team is with JOK.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely subscribe to the OBR. You'll get our coverage for the rest of this season, as well as the big off season to come. If you are in chat, please hit us up with your comments and questions. We will go on to those. I don't have a ton of questions I was able to prepare in the 45 minutes or so before the show. So a couple things that we are going to talk about. One thing we got to talk about from the jump, Pete, is special teams. It is a recurring disaster this season, arguably 3 games lost because of special teams. I don't know if you can say this one. I think the 49ers outplayed the Browns, but certainly the Jets and the Bengals, and was a contributing factor certainly to this loss or the extent of this loss. Boy, oh boy. We have that long return, Corley kick return at the 5-yard line, the Larvadain fumble. Why is Bubba Ventrone immune from accountability, Pete? Or do you think he even is?
I don't think he's immune from accountability because I think he's going to lose his job at the end of the year. And I think that's ultimately what the accountability is. I mean, if you're asking, does firing him equate to accountability? Not really. He gets the rest of the year off. You want to fire me and pay me the rest of everything you owe me for the rest of the year, Barry? I might take you up on that. Like that to me doesn't do anything. Like, you're saying, who are you sending a message to at that point? Is it the players? Because I think Gage Larvadain is going to get the message because his butt is the guy who may lose his job. I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying this is the thought process you go into. You make a mistake like that, employed bad technique, needs to have his elbows touched when he fields the punt. Didn't. Ball bounces off his chest. It's a fumble. So immediately after he had the 44-yard return plus 15-yard penalty last week, where we're all praising him, then you end up in a situation now where you're sitting there going, maybe he's not the guy there. Like I don't think that works. Like when it comes to coaches, it's not like if you fire me, you can hire somebody tomorrow and move along. I'm not suggesting you go that route, but I'm just saying you can do that. It's really difficult for an NFL team to be like, we're firing you, what week are we in? 13, 14? I've lost track. It's really difficult to say we're going to fire a coach week 13 and then in an area like special teams and just be like, well, we're just keep rolling. You don't just get to go hire a new coach. You're going to have to do that with somebody else in the building. So unless they feel super comfortable with somebody else in the building taking over that job, it just means more work for everybody else, which doesn't really help. So to me, the accountability comes at the end of the year. I've said after the Jets game, I don't think Bubba Ventrone can return to this team next year. But the cake is baked at this point, essentially on this group. So I think you're better off firing these guys at the end of the season. We've seen the Browns do this before. Browns fired Mike Prefer to get Bubba Ventrone. And, if Kevin Stefanski, assuming he's the guy who's going to be here next year, which is his own question, though I think he will be, is going to have to sit there and go, can I find somebody else? The only small defense I can say for Bubba Ventrone is that it's tough when you're constantly churning the bottom of the roster and you've got a bunch of young players. Nevertheless, it is what it is. Like, this is the NFL, and this is sort of how it goes. So, like, if it's me, I think at the end of the year he's got to go. But firing him now doesn't make much sense. In the same way that the Browns could be entirely justified releasing Gage Larvadain and putting him back in the practice squad, or just cutting him outright. I don't think that's their best path forward either. I think he should continue to be on this team and see if he can prove that he can be a punt returner, into both the rest of this season and next. In the same way that we didn't cut Andre Schmidt at the beginning of the year, and for the most part, that's a pretty good deal. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with everybody on Bubba Ventrone, but it's sort of like the offensive line. I still got to play the rest of the season before I get there. I can't just fire everybody I don't like, because you got to field the team.
Right. Well, some of the mistakes that we got during this game, as Ty Sox 15 puts it here, is the lack of game awareness. Broken Arrow echoes that point. How much of this, can you really blame on coaching, and how much of it is the fact that you've got such young players who are making these mistakes? Malachi Corley is a young player. Larvadain, obviously a young player. We got a lot of rookies out there, and rookies are going to be madly inconsistent and just make a lot of mistakes.
It's both. I mean, the question we don't know the answer to is what are they saying inside of the building? What are they saying in practice? Because I assume they cover these situations and how you'd handle it. But I can't say that for sure. If they're not coaching it, then it's its own problem. But I'm working under the assumption they're coaching it, and guys make dumb mistakes because they're guys trying to make plays, or they just don't know any better, or, a guy loses his mind temporarily. We've seen all those things happen. I do think a lot of it's the fact that they have young players and they don't have a lot of guys with a ton of awareness yet. That's what they're trying to develop. Hopefully they're getting this stuff out of the way now and eliminating it for next year, and with a lot of learning experience. Because I like what Malachi Corley brings to this football team. I'm annoyed that he didn't do that. Coach him up, get better. Same thing with Gage Larvadain. I like what Gage Larvadain brings to this football team, but you've got to coach him up, and those mistakes kill you. This is a theme with this football team. They have a ton of puppies, and they bite you, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, to sort of carry this thing over, I think this team largely is playing in the same way that Shedeur Sanders is playing, a rookie quarterback, where it's when the way I would sort of characterize Shedeur Sanders is when the Browns are on schedule and are in front of the sticks. He was good. Like, he was impressively good at points in this game. But when things weren't going well, or they were behind the sticks, things got bad, and these young players then made them worse. And I think that was pretty telling of this team as a whole. They were in this game at the half. They did some really good things in the first half, and then they took bad situations and consistently made them worse. And some of that is absolutely the fact that they have so many young players, particularly it's not even they have young players, because you look at Mason Graham and Carson Swetcher, who are both great, but they are on a unit full of very talented players who are doing a great job already. So it's very easy for them. Well, I won't say easy, easier for them to just get in there and perform a role. And to their credit, they're doing a great job. Offensively, it's a rookie trying to lead a bunch of other rookies. It's skilled players with some veteran linemen who are trying to fix it. And even at that point, when you lost Ethan Posick for a minute, I think Luke Whippler is actually a really smart player, but like the broadcast made such a point about how Shedeur Sanders said that Ethan Posick was such a valuable component and all these things. And I take him at his word. He's the guy he's working with. I don't know how much he's working with Luke Whippler. But like, that's sort of the deal. And you look at these teams where you're inserting young players, when you have those guys that can sort of help them up around them, it can be a good situation, a little bit more seamless. The Browns don't have that benefit on the offense, and we've had to sort of endure this. I think people sort of understood what it would look like, but I don't think they realized how long it would go or how frustrating it could be. And it's tough. I mean, it's not fun to lose in the way they're losing. The hope is that they're going to get enough out of these situations, out of these games, that they're going to benefit from them. That Quinshon Judkins is a really good football player. That Harold Fannin, despite the 4th and 1 situation, which we can talk about, is a really good football player. And that they're going to get enough of those guys to carry over, that then when they add to the team this offseason, that those guys are now going to be sort of force multipliers, that if they better everything else, that those guys are going to even make you that much better, which I think they will. Isaiah Bond, rookie, does dumb stuff. Another game we watch him run out of bounds seemingly for no apparent reason, even though he's talented and interesting, but that's sort of where we're at right now.
Yeah. Sort of bouncing off your points about the offense and the use of the offense, the experience in the offense is the offensive line, but a large portion of that offensive line is going to have to be replaced over the offseason. Aren't you making a case to bring in a number of veterans at key positions during the offseason for the Browns on this offense, rather than adding even more rookies to our mix of rookies on offense next year?
I think it's going to be a combination of both. It's just a question of how they want to do it. Offensive line is the one where you're going to have to bring in some veterans. You can't draft 5 guys and be like, this is what we're going to do. It's just not realistic. The way the pipeline goes from college to the NFL, you are teaching these guys in the league, and first round picks and on. You're watching it, just watching. Unfortunately, he suffered an injury. If you watched on Thanksgiving, like a lot of people wanted Josh Simmons from Ohio State on the Browns. You're watching a kid trying to learn to play offensive line in the NFL. Sadly, he got hurt, but he had a number of issues in that game because he's a rookie, and that's just how it goes. There are very few that are ready to come in and be great players out of college at that position. So it's going to be a combination of things. As far as other positions, it's going to be difficult to tell. If they find themselves in a situation where they play themselves out of the quarterback market in the draft, they're going to have to. They could love Shedeur Sanders. They could love Dylan Gabriel. They can't stand pat and just be like, this is what we're rolling with. They're going to have to do something else there even if they find themselves out of position to take quarterback. And then receivers, the one where I think you can sort of just roll with what you have with a major infusion. Jerry Jeudy is maddening in some of the things he does, but he and Cedric Tillman are at least professional wide receivers. If you bring in another guy, as many people are watching one particular guy do a lot of very impressive things against a school that may or may not be in Michigan, or something along those lines. Mekhi Lemon is another one who's really good, but like you sit there and you insert those guys in this offense, you can see a big change with Harold Fannin and everything else. But the offensive line is going to be the one where, as we can try to forecast all we want, I think it's fair to say we have absolutely no idea what that's really going to look like between both where the draft sits right now, which is months and months away, and free agency and trades and everything else, because the market's going to shake up in terms of who's actually going to be available, who's going to be re-signed. guys that are potentially cut. And, that's going to be for all the other things we can talk about. Like if they suddenly finish in the top 3, I think we can all safely say, hey, they're going to pick a quarterback. You know what I mean? Or if they are in a situation where they're not, you can say, oh, we're probably going to take a wide receiver, pending something unforeseen. The offensive line, you're sitting there going, everybody will say, well, I want them to take a left tackle, and then not really being sure who that is. Or I want to sign a talented veteran and not really be sure who that is. So that's the one where I sit here and go, presuming Andrew Berry's going to still be in charge, and based on what he did this past offseason, I can't see a scenario where he's not. You're going to have to come up with some really impressive solutions, because I don't know what that's going to look like just looking at it from here. And that may be just a lack of imagination on my part, but nevertheless, that's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. It's going to be a very interesting offseason. Just a reminder, 75% off an annual subscription if you use that QR code up in the corner, and you can follow everything that happens during the offseason along with us. Thanks for the comments and questions flowing through the chat room. They're great. Please keep them coming. I want to highlight this comment by Wolf76. He says, it's another loss for a failure of a season. Welcome to another 5-year rebuild. What bothers me is how other teams seem to improve, and the Browns never seem to make any, and it's another year over and over. I can certainly relate to and understand that. But the way I look at it, Pete, is that we are really in year 2 of a 3-year rebuild, with this franchise, and just really so encouraged by the play of the rookies. One rookie who did not make a mistake today was Quinshon Judkins. Nearly got 100 yards until, the Browns put the 49ers on short fields so frequently that we had to go to the pass a little bit more. But really impressed by this drive in the second quarter. 10 plays, 90 yards, capped by the pass from the rookie Sanders to the rookie Fannin. But good play from the offensive line, I thought, particularly during that drive. Despite all the criticism that line has taken, that to me was fairly impressive. Are you seeing the offensive line, assuming these injuries aren't going to knock it on its butt, improving over the course of the year, Pete?
I think they're improving on the margins. I think there's only so far some of these guys are going to go, because they are, for the most part, 30 and up. KT Levinson's the guy who can legitimately grow, and there are times where he's a really good run blocker. Like he helped create the crease that allowed Quinshon Judkins to make some big runs. And Quinshon Judkins had over 100 total yards, because the one thing they did was they actually got him the ball as a receiver in this game, which is something that we've been sort of waiting for him to do. He caught 3 passes for 18 yards, which was good. They did some more things in terms of that. But that drive was both really impressive and sort of highlights to me the limitations that this offense has, because they did a really good job of keeping the 49ers defense off balance. Now, the 49ers defense is dealing with a lot of injuries. No Fred Warner, no Nick Bosa, no Mykel Williams, and a number of other players. But on that drive, they ran the ball with Quinshon Judkins. They ran the ball with Dylan Sampson. They ran the ball with Malachi Corley. And they just kept doing it. I think some of that may have been informed by the fact they had KT Levinston in there. And they just basically said, this is what he can do, and we're just going to keep doing it until they can stop us, which I thought was good. But that also put them in a situation where it could now allow them to be aggressive with Shedeur Sanders. I was actually a little disappointed. They got, I think it was a 9-yard run by Sampson after he did a nice job fighting in the middle and sort of fought extra yards. And then the Browns got 2nd and 1, and they went to the 2-minute warning. And they came out and they just ran the ball. I was hoping that the Browns would come out and take a shot there, because it's 2nd and 1. If it's incomplete, 3rd and 1, okay. But it felt like a spot to take a shot. They ran the ball and got the first down. Fine, so be it. Now, they did come back, and they ran that play where Shedeur Sanders showed what he can be. Mm-hmm. This was a spot where he effortlessly kept his eyes downfield, slid up in the pocket, delivered the ball. Harold Fannin did a great job just settling in space, and then Harold Fannin does what he does, which is just fight for every yard, and found his way into the end zone. Quinshon Judkins, he had 91 yards rushing, there was at least one play in the third quarter where, if not one 49er defender sort of hanging on him long enough and sort of forcing him back inside, he was going to cut that thing all the way back to the right. And I think he had a good chance to break off a huge run. So the offensive line is just going to be tough. Kevin Stefanski said in the post game, which I know has Jack Duffin very excited, they just wanted to look at Tevin Jenkins. Mm-hmm. That is interesting to me. That wasn't injury related. They just said, we want to look at this guy. And they didn't want to look him at anywhere but right guard. It's not like they took Batonio out. It's not like they put Tevin Jenkins at right tackle. They put him at right guard, right where Wyatt Teller is. Message being sent on a couple fronts there, but they want to see what Tevin Jenkins could do. He's a big, powerful run blocker. That also sort of leans into what they were able to do with that. That's what he does. He cannot pass block all that well, which is a really good pairing with KT Levinson, who also cannot pass block very well, both of them being on the same side, but they can run block. So is that a hint at where this Browns offensive line wants to go? Is this some sort of maybe tell of the type of lineman Mike Bloomgren's going to want, assuming everybody's still here next year and that's the guy they're looking for? I don't know the answer to that, but it's at least interesting as a data point to look at. But that offensive drive, the Browns did a great job of keeping them off balance. They were able to move the ball consistently throughout that and ended up with the touchdown drive. But it also felt like, that was sort of the high water mark, which just goes to show you that you cannot sustain, cannot endure negative plays, cannot just function consistently. And it's just the amount of investment that they need there is just really frustrating. And there was so much to talk about. Well, Shedeur Sanders is going to give this offense a little bit more life than Dylan Gabriel does. I think he does. I absolutely think he does. But I also think you can still see how much more help they still need on that side of the ball, even if Shedeur Sanders is better than Dylan Gabriel in the fact that he's going to take swings and try. But at the same time, he also comes with the negative plays that we saw. And the second half was loaded with them. And some of them, I frankly don't understand. And, there's been a criticism sort of lingering with Shedeur Sanders that at times he doesn't throw the ball away as if he's protecting his stat line. And that 4th and 26 play, I have to ask the question, what are we doing? What? Yeah. Are we that worried about hurting our – at that point, I do have to wonder, are you worried about your stat line rather than trying to make a play? It's 4th and 26. You sat in the pocket and you looked around, you scrambled for 6 yards. Like, who cares if you throw a pick? Like, what are we worried about? Or an incomplete pass? Like, take a shot. And there are just times where that's clearly the most egregious example of a play where he just holds onto the ball rather than just throwing it away. But that was the worst one in terms of being able to question his motives as far as what are we focused on? Are we really trying to win? Are we really trying to make a play? Are we worried about sort of protecting our stat line there? However, he took another hit that he didn't have to take and had to come off the field for a play. And he says he's fine. That's great. I'm glad his ankle's not actually really hurt. I'm like, that's my worry for him is I think Shedeur Sanders is going to stay on the field for the rest of the year, as long as he doesn't get himself killed. Yeah. But those type of plays make it difficult because like these guys hit really hard. And when you take those hits and just don't throw the ball away and just live to play another down, I thought Brock Purdy sort of gave him a good example to look at. As a guy who, you saw in that game, Myles Garrett smiling at him because he threw the ball away because he knew he was absolutely cooked and just had to get out of it. He did that a number of times throughout the game, but he protected the field position. He lived to play another down, and they were ultimately able to find chances to make plays. Shedeur's got to embrace that willingness to just be like, the play's not there. That's fine. I'm going to get out of this until it's 4th down. Now I actually have to throw the ball and try something. And there's evidence I can see where he's working. I saw the coaching staff giving him credit for the work in the pocket, and I thought that was evident on the touchdown pass to Phantom, which looked great. But, you can also see just how far he still has to go as a quarterback and just how much work is going to be there in his development. I am all for continuing to play. We've opened that bag, so to speak, and the toothpaste is out of the tube. Let's keep rolling with it because he can be exciting. He can be fun. But I also see why I think even the most ardent Dylan Gabriel disbeliever or Schuer Sanders fan has to at least concede that you can understand why a coaching staff might feel more comfortable with Dylan Gabriel, at least initially, because he doesn't do some of these hugely negative things that Schuer Sanders does. And then now appreciate the fact that Schuer Sanders, compared to Dylan Gabriel, is at least willing to take the shots that Gabriel would not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Tysock said, on that fourth down play, you could throw it long and, hope for a pass interference or, just random chance to potentially complete the pass, even if it's covered. Just a sign, in my opinion, I guess, Pete, of indecisiveness on Sanders' part. He didn't know what to do in that situation. He didn't have Travis Hunter to throw the ball to, and just said, okay, I'm taking off, with no hope of making the first down. Hard to say why he did what he did. I don't know if the question was asked. One question that was asked was to Kevin Stefanski, who, based on the reports I read before the show, apparently indicated that Sanders is going to get another start. Sanders, 16 of 25, 149 yards, 1 touchdown, 93.6 quarterback rating. Okay. I mean, that's all right, I guess, as a stat line. Did you think that that's the right call to continue to go with Sanders?
Absolutely. I think he should, one, I think the Titans are going to be a great opponent for him to hopefully continue to grow and can progress. And I saw some really good things. Like, I honestly thought he was going to play a lot worse in this game. I thought, I thought the weather was also going to be worse, but I thought the 49er defense would have more success than they did. I thought it would look more like Carolina did for them last week, where they had a bunch of turnovers, and they didn't. Now, some of that is because the Browns are protecting Shedeur Sanders and trying to run a game plan that sort of limits his exposure. But I also think he does some smart things that allows him to, provides reason to keep going. And the plays he can make are impressive. Like, look, the costly play that they had, the 3rd and 5, he sits in the first quarter, I think that was, he misses Jerry Jeudy. And, at the time, and that led to the 66-yard punt return. And at the time, it was a gut punch. You're like, man, that could have been a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and it may have been. And I'm sure that's when Sanders wants back. But at the same time, I'm sitting there going, it sucks that he missed it, but Dylan Gabriel's not taking that swing. Dylan Gabriel's probably dropping his eyes and looking somewhere else. And then we're looking at the all 22 after the fact going, why are we not throwing it here?
Right.
I will live with at least taking the swing. I mean, I want to hit those plays. I mean, that part of the reason I think Sanders should be in there is because he hit the play to Dylan Sampson last week that Dylan Gabriel did not hit to Malachi Corley against the Jets. Mm-hmm. But I still like the fact that he's at least taking the swings. Similar late in the game where he had that post. I think if he saw it on time, I think that could have been a touchdown. He rolled and threw it late, and it came out of his hands badly. And ended up falling incomplete, but at least he's taking the swings. I can live with that because it at least allows the receivers to show what they can do. If Dylan Gabriel's in there and they don't make that throw, everybody's sitting there going, well, what's Jerry Jeudy doing this game? Well, he was wide open for a touchdown. We got to hit it, and we got to coach that, and we got to work on it. But Jerry Jeudy did exactly what we criticized him for on Gang of 3 this past week. He finished the play. He was open. He did exactly what we wanted him to do, and we just couldn't make the play. That's going to come open again at some point. Maybe this week against the Titans. Maybe it's in 2 weeks. That play is going to be there at some point again. Hit it the next time. Coach him up. Like, that's the stuff where, like, it sucks because everybody's sitting here going, man, the Browns lost again. I want them to win. I want them to do this and that. But given where the Browns are and what this season has become, really what it always was with these 2 rookie quarterbacks, is these are opportunities to grow. It sure is giving you reasons to believe that he can grow. Is that going to be enough to be a franchise level starting quarterback? Probably not in 6 games, but it at least sits there and goes, well, even if whether I get a veteran or I draft another kid, I'm not bailing on this kid. I'm going to keep developing him and see what happens, because if the worst thing that could possibly happen to me is I have multiple really good quarterbacks, I will live in that world. I will deal with the problem of having too many good quarterbacks. I dream of living in a Cleveland Browns world where they have too many good quarterbacks, but at least he's doing those things that I can see it. The downsides, the negatives drive you insane, and they make you want to just pull your hair out and everything else because of, like, the sacks he takes and some of the other stuff he does, but like he will fight. And I can at least respect that and want to see that. And that was the thing I was consistently on here talking about with Dillon Gabriel is like, I really like the kid off the field. I like the way he talks. I like all the things he says and everything else. But when he's on the field, it just never felt like he was really fighting for a job. Right. Sure, Sanders, I at least get a sense that he's swinging, and I can roll with that.
Yeah, as far as Gabriel's concerned, I can't see them from him. A third-round draft pick. He's probably on the team next year.
Yep.
But Sanders, I think, has more potential. It seems like his issues are more fixable than Gabriel's are. I'm not a quarterback coach. I can't tell you with great precision, what the problems each quarterback has. But Sanders, needs to work on his footwork a bit. He needs to work on his decision-making a bit. And that all seems like stuff that can happen with enough experience. Dillon Gabriel didn't show me enough to really have a lot of confidence to put him in to try to build up that experience. He sort of is what he is. 6 years of college, he's more of a finished product, in my opinion.
I think, when the Browns got him, I thought he was left-handed Case Keenum. And Case Keenum and guys like that are largely going to play to the talent that is around them. They're not going to make them better. They're going to play basically what they are. Browns don't have enough talent on offense, so that's going to make Dillon Gabriel sort of play down to their talent. Sure, Sanders is way more flawed, but he also has a skill set that can elevate talent. He can make guys better. He can, particularly receivers, he can make better. Offensive line, not so much. He's a net negative at this point. Now, the stuff he's got to fix is going to take a lot of work. The Browns are trying as hard as they can and trying to do it as fast as they can. And you can see some of it paying off at times. The touchdown to Harold Fant is a good example where it looks good. And then when he's rolling to his right and getting sacked from behind, or, they take the penalty for the illegal shift, which is really on him. And then he drops back 13 yards and takes a sack. It's going to be a process to fight those urges, and it's going to be a lot of reps and a lot of work and potentially an off season or two to get those things right. And he has to commit to really wanting to do that. And, and on some level, the lessons he's going to take are physical ones. People hitting him are potentially, hopefully, going to change his behavior in that respect. But it's been such an ingrained habit. And unfortunately, this is sort of the problem he ran into in college. He took so many sacks that you develop really bad habits by doing that. You play in a world where you have to survive. So the Browns, the Browns gave him a lot of credit this week, saying he's been working to stay in the pocket, trust the pocket, all these things, trying to give him tools. It's not difficult. I mean, it's not easy to sort of change those habits, but it is work. It is reps. If you get the whole 10,000 reps and all that stuff, well, that's really difficult to do in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a process. Some of the stuff he can that may be more difficult for him to work on will continue to take time, is just his ability to process what defenses are throwing at him. Because too often what happens when he sees it immediately and he's right, he's great. The problem, what happens, and we've seen this a couple of times with sacks, where the defense does something he's not sure of, and his immediate reaction is usually pulling the ball down and trying to extend the play, and he gets himself sacked doing that. And you described it earlier as he looks like he's unsure of what to do. I agree with you, and he hasn't developed the tools and the sort of base, like the sort of process in terms of, okay, this isn't there. I got to get to my check down, or I got to get out. His mentality was always, I got to be the guy and I got to make the plays or the offense isn't going to move. And based on what he had to do in college, that's absolutely true. Colorado wasn't going anywhere unless he took them anywhere. So, he sort of developed himself out of necessity rather than really learning how to play quarterback. And that's unfortunately what the Browns are sort of tasked with trying to fix. And it's going to be a long process for him. And that's why I'm curious to see what they can accomplish in sort of a short amount of time, what he can do, because I don't doubt his want to. It's just a question of, I'd love to know what his sort of process is. He's always talks about being very tactile, but like in terms of, is he going into every week and saying, I've got to really focus on this? Or is he trying to do it all at once? Because there's a lot to do, and that can be overwhelming at points. So I sort of appreciate the way he's very open in how he thinks. I'd be curious to know how sort of his process is in trying to sort of knock down the various challenges he's faced with.
Right. Yeah, we have the question from Chris R up on the screen asking whether Sanders is reading defenses or reacting, whether he can learn or if he's a backyard style QB without athletic ability like a Lamar Jackson. I think you've effectively answered most of that, but if you have anything to add, go ahead.
He wants to read, but he is often reacting. There are times when he sees it and he recognizes something that he's accustomed to, he's reading it. When he's not, he's reacting, and it's usually not going very well. And then, yes, he goes into Colorado mode where he's trying to extend the play and turn into Ben Roethlisberger more than Lamar Jackson, say, just as a stylistic comparison, because there was a substantial part of Ben Roethlisberger's career, often at the pain of the Browns, where he would just wait for the play to sort of break down, run around, and throw it up, and it would work. That is what Colorado's offense boiled down to a lot of the time. So, yeah, that's sort of what he has to be challenged with. But Ben Roethlisberger also learned how to read defenses and figure it out. It can be done, but this is the amount of work that's going to be like you can hear us talking about how much there is for him to learn. The talent is real, but that's a long list, and you're hoping by the end of the season he's going to knock out some of those things, but it's going to be a process for him.
Yeah. And the question is whether the Browns can wait for that process, to happen when they're on a countdown to 2026, when the expectation is that this team is going to be competitive. Let's talk about another rookie, Harold Fannin. Terrific pass reception for a touchdown. Great to see him continue to dominate. David Njoku, I don't know, he played today, I assume. Didn't see very much of him. I guess first question I have on Harold Fannin, Pete, is, does he make David Njoku dispensable next year? Can you go into 2026 with him as your number one tight end?
No. He doesn't make him disposable in the sense that in terms of being a pass catcher, Harold Fannin could be your F. The F is the slot, the wing. He's rarely, if ever, lined up in line, which is the guy next to the tackle. He's just not big enough, not long enough to do that regularly. If you have somebody who can do that job, which David Njoku can, it makes Harold Fannin more dangerous because of all the other areas he can sort of impact the game. But if you get rid of David Njoku, you then need to get a credible Y, which is what David Njoku is. He's an inline guy. Now, he can line up all over the place, but for all intents and purposes, he's a credible Y. He can line up next to the tackle. He can do all those things. He's big enough, strong enough, long enough, all those things. So if you don't keep Njoku, then you're going to have to get that. And that does not mean that you can just put Brendan Bates or Blake Whiteheart in there. You need something more credible in there. David Njoku offers credibility. Now, if I was to sort of point to a guy that I sort of look at as a potential, if he were in the draft and if the price were right, Max Clare from Ohio State is sort of the ideal guy that I would look at in the mold of somebody to eventually replace a guy like David Njoku, because he's what David Njoku was in college. He's really fluid, really good at pass catcher. And the Browns have done this where they just develop, they take these guys who are really good athletes, fluid pass catching threats, and then teach them how to block. Max Clare is big enough. He's long enough. The Buckeyes use him quite a bit in space. They use guys like Kes Merrick more in line, but you can teach him. They did it with Harrison Bryant. They did it with, they tried it with Seth the Volve a little bit. Take that guy and bulk him up. And in a perfect world, if the price were right and everything to work out, you keep Njoku, you draft a guy like Claire and develop him, and then you sort of allow him to grow into and ultimately replace David Njoku. So that would be my dream scenario, that type of thing. And I don't care about Claire just because he's a Buckeye. He was phenomenal for Purdue.
Right.
He was really, really good. And then, but if you are looking at it from an Ohio State standpoint, I would look at him more from last week when the Buckeyes were down both Tate and Jeremiah Smith, and all of a sudden Mac was the guy getting all the plays. And he looks great. And I think he sort of fits in the mold the Browns have liked at that tight end spot. But you need a guy that can do those things. You need a guy who can get up on the line of scrimmage and reach block and do some of those other things. And Fannon's just never going to be that guy. It's the same concept the Ravens have with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. That's the natural comparison. Isaiah Likely is a different body type, but in terms of athletic ability and just overall play style, Isaiah Likely is a lot like Fannin. Njoku is a lot like Mark Andrews. As far as Njoku goes, I get the frustration, and I'm not interested in paying him $15 million a year. But I do think there's an element to this offense where if the offense was better, David Njoku would also be better. They need him to do a lot of dirty work because they're so bad on the offensive line. And that's sort of limiting what he can do. It's a lot of chip release. He doesn't get to run a whole lot of just routes. And most of his routes are about 3 feet from the line of scrimmage. He turns around and sits in space. Like, if the Browns were better, I think he becomes more dangerous. Having said that, I do think there's been a noticeable sort of decline physically. I don't know if he's playing injured or what, but he's not the guy that he sort of has been athletically. I still look to re-sign him. I just don't think you can pay him what he's been making. And to his credit, he seems to desperately want to stay here. So I think he will.
Yeah. Going back to Fannin, interesting discussion in the insider VIP game thread today after the Fannin bobble with that fumble. There was a lot of finger pointing at the coach in the thread and said that was a dumb call. I think your opinion, Pete, was more that it was the call was less of an issue than a player just simply bobbling a football.
Well, I think it's two things. One, I think the sort of jumbled nature of trying to get that call off was legitimately something you can criticize. They are rushing guys on the field. They're trying to do this, that, and the other, and it looked like they were rushing. Kevin Stefanski said after the game that it was on a short count, so they got what they got lined up and they went for it. Running low against the play clock, I think, creates sort of a natural level of stress. I think was probably unwarranted in that situation. I think either just letting the play clock run out and punting it or taking a timeout was probably the best course of action there. But even on replay, I was actually surprised at how cleanly the play came off relative to that madness. But I think that's where the criticism is. I think just that jumbled nature makes it look really bad from an outside perspective. And I do think if you're going to criticize anything about that play relative to the coaching, that was it. It just wasn't clean enough. You didn't get a chance to set it up probably how you would have liked. And you tried to make a chaotic situation work, and it didn't. But in terms of the way people treat taking an under center snap is just it's like they treat it like this mysterious thing that like nobody can do. It's not difficult. I coach it. It's you teach them. I mean, like, you don't have to take a whole bunch of practice time other than running either. Like, Fannin and a center can just do snaps in the building. They can do whatever they want. Like, it's not difficult to do. And the thing is, what you're not asking Fannin to do specifically in this situation, presumably it looked like you were just asking him to take the ball and go forward. You're not asking him to turn around. You're not asking him to pivot. You're not asking him to deliver the ball anywhere. So he's literally just taking the ball from the center and just pushing. And he's 240 something pounds. And he and Quinshon Judkins are both fantastic at breaking tackles. Like, I've been waiting for them to do this all year. And part of the reason I've been waiting for them to do this all year, because they did it with Harrison Bryant to great effect, to the point where when they had Harrison Bryant, they started running plays off of that, where they ran jet stuff. They ran end arounds and stuff off of Harrison Bryant being a sneak factor. I've been desperately, like, they've been running the Wildcat. I have been waiting for them. I thought, they just said, screw it, and put Quinshon Judkins in there, and he looks great doing it. I thought at some point they would just put Harold Fannin back there and have him run read option, or just read off of Judkins and either keep it or run it, because they're both just bowling balls. But we're asking them to go to yard. So, like, you get into this whole conversation where, like, we always talk about this. We say we want the Browns to be creative, but then we're complaining that they overthink things. And we saw the same thing on 4th and 1 earlier in the game. If we can't hand the ball off to Quinshon Judkins on 4th and 1, what are we doing? Like,
yeah,
there's criticism that we're not sneaking the ball there. Well, then we tried to sneak here. We're mad about it. So, like, I don't know that that's Schroeder Sanders' strength. or not. But like, if we can't consistently just turn around and give Quinshon Judkins, who's been great in this, I mean, his whole career with the Browns is running into that and creating something. It sucks that the results don't work. And anytime those plays don't work, it's easy to criticize, and I get it. And that's just the nature of the business. But like, those are things I want the Browns to do. I just want them to do in a more orderly fashion where it doesn't look like it's sort of rushed and allows the opponent to make a play like it did. And unfortunately, the ball snap hit Fannin right in the hands, bounced clean off him. You can see it clear as day in the replay. And that the play was dead as soon as that happens. So it's not a difficult thing to do. I could teach Fannin how to take a snap under center. I'm sure they taught him how to do it. But it's not some magical thing. I don't want to put him in shotgun. I just want him to get the ball under center and go 2 feet.
Yeah. Let's jump to a couple of questions here, and keep them coming if you're in the chat room. Appreciate them. Let's go to Jeffrey Champion. He said, improvements. What improvements did you see from Shedeur Sanders? I thought his pocket presence was better. Uptick 3 straight games, Pete, coming in for the Ravens, and then looking better again last week and this week. Did you see any steps forward?
As I mentioned earlier, I think when the situation was in his favor, I think he was really good. He did a nice job on the touchdown of Fannin, most notably, but I think there were a number of times where he did a nice job sitting in the pocket, sort of scanning the field and seeing what was there, including the play he missed to Judy. Even though he misses that play, that was a good example of what we're talking about. But, when the situation was sort of adverse, or the Browns were behind the sticks because of a penalty or because of a negative play, I thought he resorted to bad habits. And he tried to do a good thing initially on the play where he sort of hurt his ankle, but then he ultimately devolved into a bad thing. If he settled in the pocket, looked around, didn't see anything, okay, throw it over the head of the check down guy and move on. But he decided to try to run and took an unnecessary hit and had to miss a play. Like, I'm hoping that's a coachable point from the Browns. They're basically saying, look, man, you can't do this, because it's not because we don't want you to. We don't, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because if you're off the field because you're hurt, you can't play. And he needs to have the mindset of, I need to be on the field. He's got to protect himself from those situations. But there were too many. When the situation got bad, and particularly late in the second half, you saw him devolve right back into Colorado Sanders, and it was bad. He did the things that you just absolutely drive you nuts, and the things that critics pointed to and said, this is not going to work, and why you end up going in the 5th round. As with everything with Shedeur Sanders, there's some good stuff and there's some bad stuff. Ultimately, I see more than enough positive to stay with him. But the bad stuff's still there, and it's going to continue to be there pretty much the rest of the year. I don't foresee a situation where Shedeur Sanders is going to have a perfect game by any stretch. I just don't think that's in the cards at this point. But I do think he can play well enough to beat a team like Tennessee next week. I do think he can potentially compete in some of these other games and help them win football games. But he's got to grow each and every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that continued improvement from Shedeur Sanders. Comment here, the only bright spot of the season is Miles hopefully smashing the sack record. He got another one today, Pete, but Brock Purdy did a very nice job, I thought, of eluding that rush throughout the day, and really shows you what a mobile quarterback who is smart with his decisions on the field can do to even the best defensive line, even the best rush that comes after him. And I got to say, as much as I hate to say it, I was really impressed.
Yeah, I thought Brock Purdy did a nice job. I thought the 49ers did a pretty good job in terms of designing concepts that sort of allowed him to get to enough space to operate. And the Browns did not do a great job at keeping him in the pocket. And it allowed him to sort of extend plays. Miles got sacked 19. He got tackles for loss up to 28 now, since we know he's also looking at that record, which I didn't even know until he brought it up. He needs 11 more to catch J.J. Watt, which I also didn't know who had it, but it makes sense. But I'll take a moment to appreciate the move he put on Trent Williams. That's a Hall of Fame tackle who he beat without being touched on that inside move to get to Brock Purdy. Like Trent Williams, who is said all the kindest things about Myles Garrett and his ability, having faced him before. that was a wow moment. And unfortunately, that was the type of move you had to make in this game to get Brock Purdy onto the ground. It was the only sack they had because Brock Purdy just refused to be sacked with the football. Now, to say it's the only bright spot, I mean, Myles Garrett has said it. I really appreciated his comments. He said that both, I think, before this game and then during the week. Myles is keenly aware of what the Browns have built around him and that what that is allowing to do, because he talked about he was asked about, I think Jeff Shadell compared it to Babe Ruth. And the first thing he said is, I cannot do what I'm doing without my teammates. They are making my life so much easier. Mason Graham, who played really well, has 0 sacks on the season. Myles Garrett is very careful to almost mention him first, just what he does for him. And just how much his life is easier, because they take away so many lanes from even one of the tackles for loss. Mason Graham completely blew up the play, but ended up flying past the ball carrier, and Myles Garrett came up and scooped it up for the tackle for loss. There are no doubt that Myles Garrett does the superhuman stuff. That Trent Williams play was the superhuman stuff he does. In previous seasons, and a lot of the previous seasons, he had to do that for all of them. This year, he doesn't, and it's because he's got so many guys that are helping him. And unfortunately, with the Malik Collins injury, we don't know. I don't know what the status of Isaiah McGuire is. Hopefully, you get Alex Wright back here shortly. That changes things a little bit, but they've got a lot of guys. Mason Graham has been really good. They need more from Mike Hall at this point. If Collins is down, presumably for the end of the year, they're going to need more contributions from those guys, and maybe that potentially limits what they're able to do, but they're also about to play the Tennessee Titans, who don't block very particularly well, and Cam Ward likes to hold on to the ball. They're going to play the Chicago Bears, who have a quarterback who likes to hold on to the ball. So they're going to have opportunities to hopefully get that record. He made a point about saying that the number of sacks I have in my head is on my wristband. That number was 25. That's the number he's shooting for, but he wants the record for tackles for loss, and he's got a shot at that too. And, that's the other part that's sort of come out with this whole thing with Myles Garrett is Kevin Stefanski and Jim Schwartz continue to highlight the sacks are great. He's phenomenal at that, but it's his run defense where he's been really good. And they keep harping on that over and over and over again, because this has been his best year in terms of run defense in his career. He's been really, really good at that. And again, the team defense element really works for him. But yes, obviously, as was mentioned, Carson Wentz is fantastic. He had another really good game. Him and Mason Graham have been everything this team is hoping for, save for Mason Graham's box score, which is fine. But, if you watched the game between Ohio State and Michigan, you could not help but notice the difference from Mason Graham playing the last 2 years and Mason Graham not playing this year, because when the Buckeyes needed to have it in the second half, they just ran him over. They could not do that last year. He just completely took that away, and now he's doing that for the Browns, and it's making their life so much easier from that end.
Yeah, Mason Graham just last year was very frustrating, I can say, as a Buckeyes fan, to have him across the line, and he's making professional players' lives miserable right now and really helping Myles Garrett. So a comment here from Brexy, I think it's pronounced. So when Caleb or Bryce struggled the first year, they're padding their stat line, ? Where do these narratives come from? What is the coach's biggest peeve? Interceptions and not taking care of the ball. At least you got to give Sanders credit for that today. He did take care of the ball fairly effectively, didn't throw any interceptions, didn't make any obvious mistakes. But to that extent, one would think that Stefanski would be happy with what Sanders displayed today.
Well, this is clearly in reference to 4th and 26. And I can tell you, as somebody who really liked Derek Carr would get absolutely hammered for some of the decisions he made on 4th down over the course of his career, and including both throwaways. Like fourth and 4, Derek Carr threw the ball away and would get absolutely pilloried for it fairly. As somebody who liked Derek Carr, thought he was a good quarterback, you just can't do it. You cannot take sacks on 4th down. You cannot just try to scramble on 4th and 26. There's nothing to do. So in that situation, you are literally not helping your team by not giving them a chance. They call DPI or something weird happens, defensive holding or something, penalty, 1st down. But you scramble for 6 yards, you take another hit you don't need to take. I don't even know you really took a hit. You put your body in harm's way theoretically for a play that's never going to work. He's never going to run for 26 yards in that situation. And so is he protecting the ball? No, because they turned the ball over on downs. They just did 6 yards away from where they were before. So take the shot. I mean, those are the things. They're by and large, I think, to your point, yes, he does take care of the football. He did not make a bunch of bad throws. He did not put the ball in harm's way. I think at times, both in the NFL and his college career, there are times where he's not throwing balls he probably should. But the large point is he just takes too many hits that he shouldn't, takes sacks he shouldn't, and doesn't throw the ball away. And like we talked about, Brock Purdy was a good example of a guy who's doing right by his team and protecting the football and throwing the ball away, as opposed to just I can't defend. Like I've always sort of like thought about this and being like, there's no way he's really protecting his stat line. But when I watch him do it on 4th and 26, like I have to at least ask the question, what are we doing here other than not trying to throw a pick in that situation? Like, are we unwilling to throw a Hail Mary, at the end of a half because we're worried about a pick or something along those lines? Like I at least have to ask, what is the thought process on 4th and 26 when you don't throw the football away and you have all the time? It wasn't like he was rushed. He sat in the pocket, ultimately took his time and then sort of stepped up and ran for it. Like it was like Lenore Sellers for South Carolina, who got absolutely destroyed for doing the similar thing on 4th and 16 a couple weeks ago. Like it's a losing play.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just inexplicable. So we're looking for explanations. Question from Jeffrey Champion. He said, would you guys be interested in George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, Alec Pierce, A.J. Brown, or Chris Godwin? Some free agents, some you have to trade for, but looking for that experience and in the wide receiver room to add to Jerry Jeudy. Any of those names particularly jump out at you, Pete?
No, on George Pickens, because I think if you give him $120 million, which I think he's going to get, you're not going to be able to trust him with it. And it's not because he's a bad person, like necessarily with his money or anything. It's because he's legitimately shown a track record for losing his mind on his own football team. So if you now give him a contract that you cannot deal away, that is trouble. He's an incredibly talented player. And I enjoy the fact that the Steelers are getting hammered for, stories that I don't think are true, but nevertheless, I don't hate it when they go worst trade of all time connected to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still, George Pickens is in the perfect place for him in Dallas, but he's also on his best behavior because it's a contract year. Brandon Ayuk is a no for me at this point. One, he shredded his knee. Two, the whole situation with the 49ers is incredibly strange. I don't think he's ever going to be back to the player he was. And he already told you the Browns no when they tried to trade for him. I don't have a real good feeling about him. I think he's going to end up in Washington, but we'll see. But I am really concerned that he's going to be sort of that. I don't want to say Dwayne Bowe because he's going to be like non-competitive, but I do wonder what he can do having come back from these injuries, and this whole weird thing with the 49ers is just bizarre. Alec Pierce is going to cost a fortune. That scares the crap out of me. I don't know. Like if he's a $20 million receiver, I'm not paying him $20 million. A.J. Brown's a no for me, and a no for the Eagles too. One, I do think he's starting to lose his physicality. Two, the Eagles would have to eat an insane amount of money to trade him, and I don't know what you'd give up for him to sort of the Eagles would expecting you to make up the difference of the guaranteed money. Chris Godwin, I don't know what his situation is at this point. Obviously, the thing with him is injuries. Loved his game coming to college, out of Penn State and all that stuff. He was a great receiver. He has come back from a lot of injuries. I don't know what's left for him at this point. Like this is sort of the situation where, you want the Browns to be aggressive on the wide receiver market, but like at the same time, I think the wide receiver market is a little sketchy. And that's why, like, if they find themselves in a situation where, they've got 2 first-round picks, I'm hoping they use one of them on a wide receiver because I think the talent's going to be there. I think that's also the better place to go get receiver talent. Maybe there's a buy that makes more sense that I'm not seeing, or a price that makes more sense that I'm not seeing. But of the options you mentioned, there could be a ton of movement. But 2, I don't think those are good fits.
All right, fair enough. Comment from RobyMan538 says Jim Schwartz deserves a second chance to be a head coach.
No, he
doesn't. You think he's merited this?
I think Mike Hall and Mason Graham were the closest thing to an engagement ring he's going to get relative to coaching. Jim Schwartz is a fine defensive coordinator. I don't even think he's the best at that. He's good at what he does. He's exactly what the Browns need. He also needs somebody to balance him out because he's a legitimate psychopath in terms of like his demands for players, which is good. It's really good for defense. It's really good for what he's trying to do, but it's not good for the whole team. And we saw what that sort of leaves him at in Detroit. It can get you up to 500 and then you stop and you just stay there because he's not going to advance the ball in that. I don't know what he's going to give you in terms of hiring or anything else. Like that's, to me, is a nightmare situation. I love Jim Schwartz for what he is. He's a really, really good defensive coordinator. Good. I emphasize on good. He's got a really good situation too. He's got a ton of talent. That's the other part that gets sort of lost on this. Like Jim Schwartz is doing a good job. And investing in players for Jim Schwartz has proven to be extremely smart. You have also invested a ton into Jim Schwartz between everything they have. You have the best player on the planet in Myles Garrett. You just gave him a top 5 pick in Mason Graham. You gave him a second-round pick the previous year in Mike Hall. You have third and fourth-round picks in Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright, and you signed Malik Collins to a free agent contract. You have found some nice finds on Cam Thomas and Aiden Huntington, to a smaller example. And Shelby Harris has been a really good purchase for you. That's just the defensive line. That's literally just the defensive line. I haven't talked about any other position. That's just his defensive line. That's how much you've invested in this man. And it's worked. It's worth it. Mm-hmm. He's not doing anything on offense, nor should he. I think he's in the exact right spot for him to be in. And it's part of the reason, like, if the Browns if he was truly to get a head coaching job somewhere, okay, but I don't think it's in his best interest because he's never going to get to coach somebody like this again. And I don't think he's cut out for being a full-time head coach. And the other problem I think he is keenly aware of, and he's in great shape now, is he's had health issues. I don't know if that sort of stops him from anything. I know he still sort of thinks about being a head coach and all this, but I also think he's like in a really good spot relative to what he is. And he knows how much the Browns have poured into him. So I think there's that part of it too. Yeah,
he's a good fit for Cleveland. Hopefully Cleveland's a good fit for him. I have a little bit of sympathy for him because he's an older coach and, a lot of times everybody's looking for the hot young coordinator, emphasis on young. And I like to see some of us graybeards get a chance from time to time, but I think you have a very good point there. Let's finish with Ghostwriter BA877. Says it's the perfect season. Win 5 or 6 games, develop the rookies, and Myles gets the record. That's a positive take on this season. You think those 5-6 wins are likely?
Potentially. I mean, they should beat the Titans. The Titans are bad. I mean, ultimately, I think the way I'd sort of frame this season is you found out your good defense is really good. And everything you've invested on that side of the ball is what you hoped you would get. You're going to have 10 or presuming they re-sign Ronnie Hickman, which I think is a lock, as a restricted free agent. You're going to have all 11 starters back next year on defense. You are set up to then do everything you want on offense. So, which is a lot of work. Undeniable how much work that is. But that is sort of where you can, the potential is there for them to take off. If they do it correctly, they could be great. If they do it badly, they could be the Minnesota Vikings. And that's not a crack at the Minnesota Vikings. It's just sort of like look at where they are with JJ McCarthy and everybody's sitting there going, oh my God, what did we do? Or another example would be, they didn't build the same way, but the Atlanta Falcons are in a similar situation where you had the quarterback, you have a bunch of really good offensive players, really good line, and then you just put two really talented pass rushers on your team. And you felt like, oh, this is going to be great. And then Michael Penix isn't good to this point and then gets hurt for the season. You're going, oh my God, what did we do? And this is all while you paid Kirk Cousins $160 million guaranteed. So that's the potential where it could go very badly for the Browns. It could, they do it right, and they can find a way to cobble together an offensive line. If they can whether they get a quarterback in the draft or they get a very, very veteran, good veteran quarterback, Geno Smith would work very nicely, in my opinion, if they can make that work. And you get a guy like Carnell Tate, and you throw that on offense, and you continue to build this thing. This thing could take off and be a very good team immediately, not unlike what Seattle is doing this year. they're sort of the upside option where Seattle's really, really good team out of nowhere, seemingly, with what they've done. That's sort of where they're at. And obviously the other possibilities, they end up somewhere in the middle. But the difference is I don't expect, unless the Browns take a quarterback and it just flops, certainly possible. I don't think they're going to overextend themselves to a point where they're going to put themselves in a position where they're sort of stuck. I think that was the big takeaway and hopefully lesson, because and yet teams still do this and we still see it. Atlanta's a good example where now they feel like they're stuck. Not only did they pay all this money for the Kirk Cousins, not only did they do this thing with Michael Penix, they also just traded around the first round pick. So they're going to give basically a top 5, top 6, top 7 pick to the Rams, who the Rams look great. That's sort of the nightmare situation the Browns were in. Now they're sort of past it, and so we'll see where they go. But
right,
the season is incredibly frustrating. Having said that, yes, there are good things to take away from it. Myles Garrett getting that sack record would, I think, in as much be great for Myles Garrett. I do think that is a very team, and he says it more than anybody, which I give him all the credit in the world for. It is a very team feeling stat and record that if he's able to get it.
Well, I hope so. It seems inevitable at this point, but just want to thank you, Pete, for your insight tonight. Thank you, everybody in the chat room, for your questions and comments throughout. Remember, we're doing that 75% off sale. Use that QR code in the top left corner. That's only good for one more day. So act now, as they say, because at the end of Monday night, at the end of Cyber Monday, it is over and you're not going to get that deal anymore. So please subscribe to the OBR for 75% off. Thanks again, Pete. For Pete Smith, I am Barry McBride. I'll be back tomorrow night with Gang of 3, which will be a Gang of 2 with me and Lane Atkins. Pete's got some other things he's dealing with that night. So we hope to see you again then. Good night, everybody.